Have you ever noticed that, as you've grown older, you feel a little more sensitive to noise? Noise in conversations, noise in expectations, noise in the constant need to explain yourself? Maybe it shows up when someone asks a question that feels too personal, or when you share something from your heart and later wish you had kept it to yourself. Many women tell me that after 60, they feel wiser and calmer in some ways, but also more aware of how easily their energy can be drained by the wrong conversations or the wrong people. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. For many years, we're taught that being open is a virtue. We're encouraged to share our thoughts, our plans, our feelings, even our struggles, so others can understand us better. And yes, connection matters. Being seen and heard matters. But there comes a season in life, especially in later years, when wisdom whispers something different. It says that not everything about you needs to be shared. Not every part of your story needs an audience. And that's not because you're hiding. It's because you're honoring yourself. Today, I want to talk with you about something gentle but powerful. The idea that in old age, you don't need to let everyone know everything about you. This isn't about becoming distant or cold. It's about choosing peace over explanation, depth over noise, and self-respect over constant openness. We'll talk about why your inner depth is not meant for everyone, and why you have every right to keep some parts of yourself untouched, just for you. As we grow older, our lives become layered. You've lived through love and loss, joy and disappointment, mistakes and miracles. You've raised families, built careers, cared for others, and likely carried burdens that no one ever fully understood. All of that creates depth, and depth is precious. It's not something that can be summed up in a quick conversation or explained away in a few sentences. It's the quiet strength you built when life was hard. It's the wisdom that came from learning things the long way. It's the calm you earned after years of storms. The truth is, that kind of depth is not meant for everyone. Some people only know how to skim the surface. They ask questions out of curiosity, not care. They listen just long enough to respond, not to understand. Others may mean well, but they simply don't have the emotional space to hold what you share. And when you offer your deepest thoughts or tender memories to someone who can't truly receive them, it can leave you feeling misunderstood, exposed, or even dismissed. Think of your inner life like a beautiful, well-tended garden. It didn't grow overnight. It took years of patience, resilience, and care. Would you invite just anyone to walk through it, pick the flowers, or comment on the soil? Of course not. You would want visitors who respect the space, who move gently, who understand how much work it took to grow something so meaningful. Your inner world deserves the same consideration. Many women feel an unspoken pressure to explain themselves, especially as they age. Why they make certain choices. Why they don't tolerate certain behaviors anymore. Why they prefer quiet over crowds or solitude over constant company. You might notice people saying, "You've changed," or "You're not as social as you used to be." What they often don't realize is that you haven't changed in a negative way. You've refined yourself. You've learned what drains you and what nourishes you. You've learned that peace is more valuable than being understood by everyone. Keeping parts of yourself private doesn't mean you're building walls. It means you're setting boundaries. There's a big difference. Walls are built out of fear. Boundaries are built out of wisdom. Boundaries say, "This part of me is valuable, and I choose who gets access to it." That choice becomes especially important in later life, when your energy is no longer something you want to waste. There is also a deep freedom that comes with realizing you don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't need to justify your feelings, your preferences, or your past. you've earned the right to say, quietly and confidently, "This is mine." When you stop oversharing, you stop giving people power over your inner peace. You stop inviting opinions that you never asked for. You stop reopening wounds just to make others comfortable. Some of the most tender parts of you may still be healing, even now. Perhaps there are losses you've never fully spoken about, regrets you've made peace with privately, or hopes that are still taking shape in your heart. These parts deserve gentleness. They deserve time. Sharing them too quickly or with the wrong person can feel like exposing a fragile seedling to harsh weather. Keeping them to yourself for a while is not selfish, it's wise. As women, especially women of an older generation, many of us were taught to give, to explain, to smooth things over, and to make others feel at ease. But later, life offers a chance to rebalance that habit. You begin to see that your inner life is not a public space. It's a sacred one, and sacred things are handled with care. You may notice that when you share less, you actually feel stronger, more grounded, less reactive. You begin to speak from choice instead of habit. When you do open up, it feels intentional, not automatic. And the people who truly matter, the ones who listen without judgment and respond with kindness, become easier to recognize. They don't demand access. They earn it. This shift can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being open with everyone. You might worry that people will misunderstand you or think you're distant. But over time, you'll likely notice something surprising. Your sense of calm grows. Your confidence deepens. You stop feeling the need to prove who you are because you know who you are. There's something deeply dignified about a woman who carries her story with quiet grace. She doesn't announce every thought or explain every decision. She knows that her life speaks for itself. She understands that her value is not measured by how much she reveals, but by how well she honors herself. As you sit with these ideas, you may start to feel a gentle permission rising inside you. Permission to hold some things close. Permission to protect your peace. Permission to let your depth be seen only by those who can truly appreciate it. That permission is one of the quiet gifts of aging, and it's one worth accepting. You might be surprised how freeing it feels when you stop needing everyone to get you. There's a quiet strength that grows in that space, when you no longer feel obligated to open up just to be understood or accepted. You begin to realize that not everyone deserves access to your story, and that's not a loss, it's a choice. A wise, grounded, beautiful choice. This leads us into something that many of us don't talk about enough: the right to keep certain parts of ourselves untouched. As women, especially in our earlier years, we're often expected to be open books, to share, explain, and accommodate others. But as we age, we begin to understand that we can be kind and loving and still keep a part of ourselves just for us. There's no rule that says your dreams, your struggles, your healing, or your growth need to be narrated to the world in real time. In fact, some of the most meaningful parts of your life might be the ones you're still processing in silence. And that silence is sacred. Think of it this way. Imagine you're nurturing a delicate plant. It's just beginning to grow, still tender and finding its way. Would you dig it up and show it to everyone every time they asked? Would you leave it out in harsh weather before it's had time to grow strong roots? Of course not. You'd protect it, shelter it, wait until it's ready. The same goes for parts of yourself that are still forming, your new dreams, your late life goals, your personal awakenings. They need care, and care sometimes means quiet. There's power in saying, "This isn't ready to be shared yet," or "This part of me is still mine and mine alone." When you allow yourself that boundary, You give yourself room to grow in peace, free from judgment, opinions, or the pressure to perform. So often we think we need to share something in order for it to feel real. We think a dream only matters if someone else knows about it. But the truth is, the deepest, most personal parts of us don't become real because others see them. They become real because we believe in them, because we feel them in our bones, because they move us, even in silence. This is why creating a safe space for your inner world is so important, especially now. As we age, we don't always have the same kind of emotional energy we did in our 30s or 40s. And honestly, that's a gift, because it means we get to be more selective about where our energy goes and who gets access to it. A safe space can look like many things. It might be a quiet morning routine where you journal with a cup of tea. It might be a cozy corner of your home where no one interrupts you. Or it might simply be the mental and emotional boundary you draw around your heart, saying, "Only those who meet me with kindness and respect are welcome here." Some people will understand that boundary immediately. Others won't, and that's okay. It's not your job to make them comfortable with your growth. It's your job to protect your peace. If you've ever felt emotionally drained after talking with someone, or regretted sharing something vulnerable with the wrong person, you already know how important this is. You can be warm, generous, and loving without making your heart available to just anyone. That's not selfish. That's wise. And here's something else to remember. Not everyone who wants access to your life deserves it. Just because someone is curious doesn't mean they're caring. Just because they're in your life doesn't mean they have a right to all of you. Relationships, especially at this stage of life, should feel reciprocal, not one-sided. They should feel safe, not demanding. Creating a safe emotional space also helps you respond to life more calmly. You don't react out of pressure. You don't overshare just to avoid awkwardness. You don't compromise your boundaries to keep others comfortable. Instead, you give yourself permission to pause, to breathe, to decide what feels right for you. And when you begin to live this way, something beautiful happens. You stop looking for validation in other people's eyes. You stop seeking approval in conversations or comments or social media likes. You stop bending to fit into other people's expectations. You come home to yourself. It's so easy in today's world to live for validation. It's everywhere. People want to know what you're doing, what you think, how you feel. There's this constant pressure to be out there in some way, to share your opinions, your lifestyle, your choices. But when you pause and ask yourself why you're sharing something, you might be surprised. Are you sharing because it nourishes you? Or are you sharing because you're hoping someone will clap for it? Living for validation is exhausting. It can make us feel like we're on a treadmill we never signed up for, constantly performing, adjusting, explaining. And even when we get that little burst of approval, it doesn't last. It never really fills the space that's craving something deeper, self-trust. When you stop needing validation, you begin to trust your own voice more. You start to see your choices not as things to justify, but as reflections of your values. You realize that your life doesn't have to be explained or defended. It simply needs to feel aligned with who you truly are. You don't need a crowd to cheer you on when you feel grounded in your own truth. You don't need applause to feel proud of how far you've come. You just need to look at your life and say, "This feels right for me." There's so much freedom in that. You start to make decisions based on peace, not pressure. You speak from your heart, not from a need to convince anyone. You create boundaries that protect your energy. And little by little, you build a life that feels calm, strong, and deeply authentic. This kind of life doesn't always look flashy. It's not loud. It's not made for the spotlight, but it's rich with meaning. It's filled with quiet victories, like saying no when something doesn't serve you, or walking away from drama, or choosing solitude over noise. And those victories? They matter. They shape your days. They shape your spirit. You've lived long enough to know that the outside world is always changing. Opinions shift. People come and go. Trends rise and fall. But your inner world, that's where your real life happens. That's where your peace lives. That's where your strength is rooted. And the more you protect it, the more you give it space to grow, the stronger it becomes. The more you allow yourself to live without needing constant validation, the freer you feel. You start to realize that your life is not a performance. It's a practice, a daily practice of honoring your energy, your values, your pace, and your truth. Let that truth guide you. Let it be enough. Let it be beautiful, even if no one else sees it. Because your story, your growth, and your peace were never meant to be performed. They were meant to be lived, quietly, fully, and on your own terms. There's something truly beautiful about reaching a stage in life where you no longer feel the need to explain yourself. Not because you're closed off, not because you don't care what others think, but because you finally realize that you are enough. Without the extra explanations, without the constant why, and without seeking permission to live the way that feels right to you. That's where the quiet power of silence comes in. Not the kind of silence that's cold or distant, but the kind that feels like peace. The kind that lets you hear your own thoughts without the clutter of other people's opinions. The kind that says, I'm not here to impress, I'm here to live deeply. In a world that celebrates loud voices and fast answers, choosing silence can feel radical. But it's also healing. Silence gives you space to pause, to breathe, to notice what you truly think and feel without interruption. It gives you time to respond instead of react, and to reflect without rushing to conclusions. How often do we say things just to fill the air? How often do we speak from habit instead of intention? When you learn to embrace silence, you stop filling gaps just to be polite or accepted. You learn that not every question needs an answer. Not every opinion deserves a reaction. And not every moment has to be shared. Silence is not emptiness. It's where clarity lives. When you spend time in quiet, whether it's a walk alone in nature, a moment of prayer, or simply sitting in your favorite chair with no noise around you, you reconnect with the part of yourself that doesn't need approval. That part of you that just is. Wise, steady, whole. And when you learn to live from that quiet place, your values begin to shine through. Not because you talk about them all the time, but because you live them. You make decisions that reflect what matters to you. You choose people and activities that support your peace. You say no to things that pull you off center, and yes to the things that truly nourish your soul. Living according to your values in this stage of life is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It doesn't mean you never compromise. It just means you don't abandon yourself to please others. It means you listen to that inner voice, the one that's been shaped by decades of experience, and you trust it. Sometimes it takes years to figure out what your true values are. You might discover that what mattered to you in your 30s no longer speaks to you now. That's okay. That's part of growth. As we age, we peel back the layers of what we were told we should want, and we discover what we truly do want. Maybe you now value peace more than productivity. Maybe you cherish deep conversation over small talk. Maybe you're more interested in rest than hustle, or more drawn to purpose than to praise. Whatever your values are, Honoring them brings you home to yourself. It makes your days feel aligned and your decisions feel easier because you're no longer pulled in 100 directions. You're anchored. And here's the truth. When you live from a place of alignment, you begin to feel more alive. You may not be running marathons or climbing mountains, but you're steady. You're grounded. You're joyful in quiet ways. You laugh more easily. You stress less. You no longer need the world to validate your choices because you know, deep down, they were made from love, for yourself, and for the life you've built. There will always be people who want more from you. More access, more answers, more visibility into your inner world. But you don't have to give it. You can live with openness of heart and still keep your soul protected. You can be kind without being completely available. You can be loving without being fully exposed. Your story is yours. Your journey is sacred. And your peace is too valuable to be handed over to just anyone. You might find that as you protect these parts of yourself, you begin to attract people who do respect your depth, people who don't push for more than you're ready to share, people who understand that silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. These are the relationships that grow slow, deep, and real. The ones that don't require performance. The ones that feel safe. At this age, you've earned the right to live without the constant noise of proving yourself. You've earned the right to say no thank you to the expectations that no longer serve you. And you've earned the right to protect the parts of yourself that are still healing, still growing, or simply too precious to hand over. You are not here to entertain. You are here to be, to live with intention, to move through your days with grace and clarity, to enjoy the quiet moments, the deep connections, and the parts of life that don't need to be broadcasted to feel meaningful. So today, I want you to remember something simple but powerful. Your worth has nothing to do with how much you share. It has everything to do with how well you care for your own soul. You don't owe anyone your full story. You don't need to offer up every dream, every memory, every thought. Some things are stronger when they stay within you, nurtured, cherished, and protected. And when you do choose to open up, let it be because you want to, not because you feel pressured to. Let it be on your terms. Let it be a gift, not an obligation. You are allowed to keep parts of yourself untouched. You are allowed to grow quietly. You are allowed to live gently. And you are allowed to be whole, even if not everyone sees the full picture. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone on this journey. So many women are rediscovering their own depth, their own strength, and their own peace. And it's a beautiful thing. If you found value in this video, please take a moment to like it and subscribe to our channel, Elderly Faith Journey, for more encouraging, heartfelt content just like this. We're here to remind you that your later years can be filled with wisdom, joy, and a sense of calm you've worked your whole life to earn. Here's to living your truth with grace, to protecting what matters most, and to choosing peace over performance. You deserve it. And remember, the best parts of your story don't always need an audience. Sometimes, the quietest chapters are the most powerful of all.